Well, I'm back in Tulsa today visiting at Mary Bolak's homemade greenhouse. If you remember last fall we visited here, Mary's a Tulsa County Master Gardener, and plus she has a little bit more background in horticulture than some of the other volunteers, but she's put together this greenhouse and come a long way since we were here in November. Now, there are a lot of things that you can be getting started right now indoors, even if you don't have a greenhouse. One thing Mary has grown is Tom Thumb loosehead leaf lettuce. And she's growing this in something you might not have even thought of for using for a container. And it is a trough that people putting up wallpaper use to dip the wallpaper in. You can get it for about half the price of a regular window box that you might buy at a garden center or elsewhere. And it works just fine. Just remember to heat up an ice pick or something else and poke a hole in the bottom so it'll drain well. And Mary just comes out here to harvest these whenever she wants a salad. In fact, they need a little bit of thinning. Now, she's already thinned the plants 3 times. And to thin, you just pull out a few. She told me to pick some out for lunch, so I don't mind a bit because this Tom Thumb is a very, very good tasting variety. Real sweet, not the least bit of bitterness. But moving on around the greenhouse, Mary's also raising some onions. This is avalanche variety. And you can see the seed heads on top there. They're ready for thinning. She also has some garlic chives started and many, many flowering annuals and perennials. This is red hot poker plant. You might have seen that in some of the garden catalogs. This is heuchera or coral bells. And some of the perennials may not flower their first year, but it's a much cheaper way to get into growing perennial plants to raise them from seed than to buy individual plants. Of course, if you have a neighbor who has a lot of them, you can get some thinnings from them when they divide their plants in the spring or the fall. Well, speaking of propagation, about a month ago, we did a show on houseplant propagation. One thing we didn't show you, though, is how to take leaf vein cuttings. If you have any plants in the begonia group that are maybe difficult to start from rooted cuttings, you could do leaf vein cuttings like this. And this is a successful one from a Rex begonia. And Mary just laid the leaf down, tucked the petiole down in the soil, and then cut across each vein with a pocket knife. Just made a little bitty slit. And where she's made a cut, plants are starting to arise. There's one here. There's one tucked back under this leaf that's arising from this vein back over here. And she's also has a few plants arising from where the petiole is calloused over. So this is a method that you might want to try, and you don't need a greenhouse for that either. Another flowering houseplant you can enjoy this time of year is the streptocarpus. The streptocarpus is in the gesneriid family, same group as African violets, so that gives you a tip on their care. They do like fairly cool temperatures, and in the summertime they go dormant, and then as the weather cools off, go into flowering again. They come in many, many colors. This one in this hanging basket is a lovely white with a little bit of purple in the veins. And then back over here, we have some that are beautiful, deep purple. There's one in a fuchsia color, and also a nice pink with some darker pink or fuchsia colored veins. Now, in a minute, I'll show you how to do a leaf vein cutting on those and have success propagating those as well. Well, as you can see, Mary has started a lot of different plants from seed. She has some vegetables here, some perennials, also some annual plants. These tomatoes give you a tip of what we mean when we say don't crowd a tomato seedling. Now, last week I was telling you about sowing tomato seed and getting it ready for spring planting. Mary has shifted this up at just the right stage. It has about 3 or 4 what we call true leaves to it. And at that point, it needs to be shifted to a larger pot. These 4-inch pots are a good size for getting them up and growing and ready to transplant outdoors. She also has a pot of young ornamental kale seedlings. This is red kale, red peacock ornamental kale. It'll be a brilliant scarlet red at maturity. Very, very pretty. And notice how cut leaf this particular variety is. It should be really attractive in the garden. Now, these need thinning, as do these basil plants down here. This is cinnamon basil. It has a nice cinnamon scent to it. And she's sown 3 seeds to a pot so that she'll ensure good full germination on each pot, but they do need thinning. I want to give you some tips on that now on getting seedlings started. Now, our master gardener, Mary, uses what she calls the bomb method for getting these separated. Just take out the clump of plants from the pot and then drop them down, and that will naturally break them apart nicely. Now let me talk a little bit about potting mix before we get started getting these up to larger pots. A lot of potting mixes that you buy pre-mixed at various stores are not very good quality, and you want to make sure that you have one that is made with sphagnum peat moss and perlite and maybe just a little bit of vermiculite mixed in. Some potting mixes that are at the cheaper end of the line are made with what's called peat moss, but it's not sphagnum peat. It doesn't sponge up and break apart nicely like this. It's a fine powder. When it's wet, it's too wet and soggy, and when it's dry, it's like a brick-type cake. It's not a very good quality, so look for sphagnum peat moss, perlite, and some vermiculite in there, and you'll have good success. Also make sure it, of course, is a sterile potting mix, and use clean containers. These 2-inch pots will be just right for potting up the basil. It's nice if you have a little potting bench like this, but if you don't, just take a cardboard box, maybe line it with a plastic garbage can, and then go ahead and pot up the plants. And one tip I want to give you on handling transplants is never handle them directly by the stem. The stem is the water and food conducting vessel for the plant, and the growing point, especially on basil, is up here at the tip. If you bruise that stem and damage it, you've killed the entire plant, so always handle them by the leaves. If you tear a leaf or bruise a leaf, it won't hurt the whole plant. Now when you're transplanting, it's handy to have a pen nearby or a pencil, and you can just tease the roots down into the pot and then firm it up. Need to fill this one in a little bit more, and then have a flat handy for setting those in. Make sure you label plants as you transplant them also, and it's handy to put the date down. Again, make sure you don't handle that stem, and just gently poke that down in and then firm the soil. Do one more, and then I'll show you how to propagate Streptocarpus plants. It's very, very easy. One key to propagation of any plants, whether you're raising seedlings or taking cuttings, again, is give them the right conditions, plenty of warmth and humidity, and pay attention to keeping clean pots and clean soil. Now this is a leaf of a Streptocarpus that I've gotten a start on. I cut it away from one of the Streptocarpuses across the way there, and what you want to do on this one is cut away the midrib, remove it from the leaf. And we'll just start right here. I want you to be able to see that. Take a pocket knife and cut away that midrib. And then if you have a flat all prepared, I'll just show you right here in this soil. You just lay that down in there and firm the soil around it. And we'll do this one as well. I'll show you a little better right here. Now along each of those veins, after a few weeks, like we showed with the Rex begonia, you'll have little plantlets starting up. Again, make sure you keep it plenty humid. And it's a good idea to use a clean knife before you start, and make sure you use a clean soil. Well, good luck with getting your transplants up and growing for this spring. Try a little bit of propagation with some of your houseplants, and by all means, enjoy getting ready for your spring gardening season.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.